As I sat in my immunization training class, I thought to myself, why would I even begin to think that the risks outweigh the benefits when it comes to vaccination? As my instructor stated, practice what you preach. That then got me thinking, why am I studying the medical field if I don't believe in modern medicine? Therefore, leading me to this today. Today I'm going to inform you about communicable disease prevention with vaccination and how vaccines are crucial to our health. As many of you may know the importance behind vaccination discovery, some of you may not understand why it was such a major event for us. I'm here to teach you a little bit more about the history of communicable disease and how our bodies work to fight them, as well as the importance of public adherence. My ethos comes from a shared story from a polio survivor who lost his twin, as well as a multitude of classmates upon the rise of polio. He noticed that 1, 2, maybe 3 of his classmates didn't show up to class almost every single day, just because they had contracted the disease or may have even died. In the first point, I'm going to go over the history of deadly diseases that maybe your grandfather had, or maybe even your parents, and they were capable of pulling through. The second will be how our immune system works to fight off pathogens. The third point I'll discuss is how vaccines are important preventative measures in relation to public health. First, I'll start by discussing a little bit about polio. It primarily affected children, devastating many families, potentially ending up with paralysis, maybe even death. Good majority of them actually even died. According to polio and historical inquiry, in the U.S., children 6 to 9 constituted the group most susceptible to the disease. It affected everyday lives of those living in the mid-1900s, resulting in public avoidance, which we are actually experiencing today, as many of you know. Jonas Salk received the most publicity for the first polio vaccination. Upon establishment, much progress has been made across the globe, with an 84% decrease from 1985 to 1994 of this disease. Another disease that I would like to mention is measles, which is a viral disease that was responsible for nearly 2 million deaths globally per year in the 1960s, according to New Public Health. Here I have a visual aid with a graph that shows a trend where, starting from roughly the 1925 on, skyrocketed in cases of measles, and then kind of just dropped back down, came back up again, and it was kind of just up and down for quite a while, where right after 1960, they kind of just flattened out quite a bit. The onset of symptoms of measles consisted of upper respiratory infection, which ended up creating a multitude of complications, including pneumonia, where pneumonia was the most common complication with the highest death rate. According to vaccines, the mortality rate in developing countries can be as high as 2 to 15%. The first establishment of the measles vaccine was a single-dose strategy, which was very ineffective. Upon the 2-dose strategy being introduced, the number of reported cases per year in 1963 dropped from about 500,000 to roughly 25,000 per year in 1970, according to New Public Health. Measles currently has a 3-dose strategy for it to be most effective, and although the majority of the population does receive that first vaccination, there's a great drop when it comes to receiving the second and third dose, therefore leading to a higher risk of contracting the disease and therefore spreading it to potential people who didn't get the second or third dose, maybe not even the first. The third disease that I would like to mention, which may be the most important, is smallpox. It affected every population and every age across the globe. Children posed the highest risk for mortality, and it left people with potential deformities and nearly 30% dead. According to smallpox and bioterrorism, the current overall mortality rate of 30%, back up, not current, overall mortality rate of 30% to those unvaccinated, and leaving 60 to 80% who survive permanently scarred. Edward Jenner, who is known as the father of vaccination, discovered that exposure to cowpox increased resistance to smallpox progression, therefore leading to the development of a vaccine for smallpox. Although smallpox was the first discovered, this point was left for last because of the fact that smallpox has been announced eradicated from the world since, well, I guess from the earth since 1980, with the last case being in Somalia in 1977. Now that we have discussed polio, measles, and smallpox, a few deadly diseases, which now we have vaccinations for, we'll move on to learn about how our immune system works to fight off deadly diseases. Basic immune functioning helps our body recognize and resist foreign pathogens such as bacteria, parasites, so on and so forth. According to the New Public Health, immunity can be acquired by response to an organism or its antigenic components, which, when introduced into a person's body, produce a natural protective immunity. Exposure to pathogens leads to a buildup of antibody formation in our bloodstream that can better equip us for fighting infection, which then leads to our point of humoral immunity, which is basically just the components of our bloodstream that helps fight off infections, such as white blood cells, which actually they're really the only blood cell that does help fight infection, consisting of roughly 5 different kinds of white blood cells, I believe it is. Innate immunity is defined as the body's first response to fighting infection, which includes cough, mucus, acidity in the stomach, and even just our skin. It helps make sure that the pathogen won't enter our bloodstream and affect our bodily functions. Now, acquired immunity develops as a result of ordinary or meditative exposure to transmittable agents that can cause disease. This then leading to vaccination, where vaccinations strengthens defense mechanisms in our bodies by exposing us to weakened versions of specific pathogens, therefore leading to a buildup in our immune system that can help our antibodies recognize foreign pathogens and destroy them right away before it gets to be hazardous, I guess. There are multiple different kinds of vaccinations. The most common, I believe, today is the inactivated, which is just a killed version of either the virus or bacteria causing a specific disease. We also do have live vaccinations. This might be a little eerie. It sounds very eerie because they're live, but they actually have lost the capacity to produce multiple cells, therefore spreading throughout your body. There are also other vaccinations that have been developed through genetic modification, as well as a few others that are not further discussed. According to the New Public Health, in developing countries, immunization averts some 3 million child deaths each year. Herd immunity is where a large population is capable of fighting disease through vaccination and or earlier exposure. The greater proportion of the amount of people immunized helps reduce the flow of specific infectious agents which then helps us protect those who are not capable of either getting a vaccination and or are too young to. So such as infants that are not of age to be able to receive the vaccination. We do want to help prevent the spread so we aren't creating havoc within the community. I have another visual aid here, which basically just shows where disease can spread. If we're not immunized, we're going to infect a multitude of people, or I guess if the population isn't immunized as a whole. But we also have herd immunity down here where majority of the population is vaccinated. A couple may or may not be, which could include infants or those who just cannot receive the vaccine due to immunocompromisation. Then those who are sick and not immunized have less chance to spread it to the majority of the population because most of us have those defense mechanisms to be able to fight it off if we do contract it. After discussing the rates of communicable disease and how our immune system cooperates, we'll now discuss our overall public health concern. There tends to be a lot of skepticism and controversy when discussing vaccination. Our World Health and Data states that according to widespread public concern for vaccine safety, it does not appear to be strongly correlated with vaccination rates, considering the French public disagrees with their safety, yet about 97% of individuals are vaccinated. There is worry that vaccine skepticism can lead to overall drop in vaccination rates, which we are currently seeing in the US. Potential for infectious disease devastation still remains today, especially in low-income countries where they don't have access to healthcare and or vaccinations. All while high-income countries may pose a threat as well as evolutionary factors contributing to new microbes and increasing abstinence to vaccination. According to smallpox and bioterrorism, the increasing threat of bioterrorism demands a new paradigm for balancing unknown but real risks against various costs and benefits of preparedness. Then leading to my last two visual aids that I have. I have a graph showing deaths caused by vaccine-preventable diseases in the world in 2017. The leading cause is tuberculosis at 1.8 million. The second being measles, third being whooping cough, and fourth being hepatitis B, so on and so forth. These are all, we have vaccines for every single one of these diseases that has created the most deaths when it comes to vaccine-preventable diseases. I also have a graph here showing just the United States. It's a similar graph. It shows that the first is still tuberculosis at 939, second being hepatitis B, third meningitis, so on and so forth. This just shows that we still are seeing a tremendous amount of disease within our community, although we do have the resources to be able to prevent them from either infecting us and or spreading to others. Now that I've presented you with this information about communicable disease and how vaccines protect populations through discovering history of disease outbreaks, reviewing immune system function, and public health risks with lack of immunization. As I left my immunization class, I had some sort of internal motivation to present this information to others who don't understand fully how important vaccination really can be, especially as a whole. Just not even just in our country, just in the world, really. If one of us has a disease where we could have prevented it through vaccination, yet we go travel to a developing country, we could then infect a multitude of people, therefore leading to a tremendous amount of death rates, considering they don't have the resources to prevent these diseases or even take care of them, I guess. As George Santanius quotes, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it."